We'll go back to our top story. US President Donald Trump threatens new sanctions and tariffs on Russia. And to discuss more on this, we are joined by Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, former senior diplomat. Welcome, sir. Welcome to DD India. Welcome, sir. Appreciate you giving us your precious time. US President Donald Trump has announced that he is strongly considering imposing large-scale economic sanctions on Russia as the conflict in Ukraine intensifies. This is Trump's direct message to Russia and Ukraine. He said, get to the table right now before it is too late. Sir, how do you see this development?
Well, you know, we have to bear in mind that there has been a lot of criticism, even within the United States, that all the pressure for a peace deal is being piled by Donald Trump on just Ukraine and not Russia. So it's possible that Trump's threat to Russia is an attempt to present himself as being more balanced. Now, I'm not alone in saying so. John Bolton, the former national security advisor to Donald Trump, also believes that President Trump's threats of sanctions against Russia are his way of trying to demonstrate a balance with regard to Ukraine and Russia. Now, let's see what Trump said. He said that he's strongly considering large-scale sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and peace deal with Ukraine is reached. And he said he was contemplating this move because Russia is absolutely pounding Ukraine on the battlefield right now. So in this sense, Trump's comments appear to mark a change in his tone, because since coming into office, he has praised the Russian President Vladimir Putin, and he has blamed Ukraine's leader Zelensky for not wanting peace with Russia. In fact, you may recall that last Friday, Trump had berated Zelensky in his Oval Office, and the public dressing down was followed this week by Trump pausing all US military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine. So it seems that all this enabled Russia's large-scale missile and drone attack on Ukraine's energy infrastructure on Thursday night. So Trump naturally is in a position that he needs to show that he's maintaining balance. So in a post, he said, I'm strongly considering large-scale banking sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and final settlement agreement on peace is reached. Now tell me, how serious are these sanctions going to be? Now, as regards the tariffs, US imports from Russia last year were less than $3 billion. So even if there are tariffs imposed with the low volume of trade, I don't think Putin is going to be worried much. And as regards banking sanctions and other sorts of sanctions which are being contemplated, you know, Russia has managed to evade and avoid all impacts of earlier sanctions by using the Chinese route. The Chinese banking system is very opaque, and the Russians have managed to use that route, and they have not really felt the impact of earlier sanctions. So I don't think Putin is very worried about the threats of sanctions, including banking sanctions, which are being contemplated. But nonetheless, it is also important to note that after talking tough with regard to Russia, President Trump adopted a more conciliatory tone. And he said that he believed that Putin wants peace. And he also said that he was finding it difficult to deal with Ukraine. And this is all within a few hours of his holding out the threat of sanctions, including banking sanctions and tariffs against Russia. So there is no doubt that his comments in regard to these sanctions have not really worried Vladimir Putin too much, for the reasons which I have just mentioned.
Donald Trump wants to reflect a balanced tone, you are saying, and that's why maybe a shift in Trump's stance. But Ambassador Dayal, you think increased economic pressure could force Russia to the negotiating table?
Well, certainly more pressure is needed to get Russia to the negotiating table. Of course, Putin has said he will not make any concessions. He has said this in very clear and outright terms. But, if the US negotiates properly with him, then it is possible that some sort of a deal can be worked out. Of course, Russia occupies a huge tract of Ukrainian territory, including, of course, Crimea. And Putin has made it clear he's not going to give up any of the territory that he's held. In fact, he wants more. So reaching an agreement is not going to be very easy. But nonetheless, it's important that the US appears to be more balanced in this approach. And in this context, as I said earlier, President Trump's remarks in regard to imposing some sanctions, banking sanctions, tariffs on Russia, may be intended to exert some pressure. How far they will succeed as far as Russia is concerned, I don't know. Let us see how things pan out. But in any case, we are all watching with interest what is going to happen in Saudi Arabia in the next few days, because President Zelensky is going there and he'll be having talks with the US side. And there is a possibility that some sort of an agreement will be worked out in regard to the mineral resources. Now, President Trump is very keen to get hold of the mineral resources of Ukraine. And in fact, that is the one concession he wants. But he's not in a position to get any concessions from Russia. And therefore, maybe this threat of imposing sanctions has to be seen in that context.
It will be interesting to see what happens in the coming days. But Ambassador Dayal, in the week since the Oval Office blow-off, we all know about that, Ukrainian officials have attempted to mend fences with their US counterparts. And both parties, like you said, are set to meet in Saudi Arabia next week. And hope, Ambassador Dayal, this meeting will be more meaningful.
Well, certainly, we all want an end to the war. In fact, no one has said this more clearly than our Prime Minister, who has repeatedly said this is not an era of war. And everybody wants the Ukrainian side and the Russian side to sit together at the table and work out an agreement. In fact, it is heartening to note that President Trump has said so very categorically to both sides, saying that please come and sit at the table, because it is necessary to bring this war to an end. Of course, unless Russia feels some due pressure, it is not going to make any concessions. And in the broader context of ending the war, some give and take is going to be necessary. So let's see whether President Trump is able to exert due pressure on the Russian side, as indeed he has done on the Ukrainians. He has put enormous pressure on the Ukrainians. Let's see whether the sort of pressure he wants to exert, or at least try to show that he wants to exert on the Russians, is going to have any effect, because, as I said earlier, everybody wants an end to this war.
Right. Ambassador Dayal, very quickly, just hours after threatening Russia with sanctions, Trump says he trusts Putin more over Zelensky. What do you make of this statement?
Well, I think he has been very consistent in saying that he trusts Putin. The whole of the European Union and various other countries, including, of course, Canada, are not trusting Putin. But President Trump has been very, very categorical in the fact that he trusts Putin and that he is sure that Putin wants an end to the war. Of course, some of the signals that we see coming out of Russia do not indicate any willingness on the part of Russia, as I said earlier, to make concessions. And therefore, will Ukraine be made to submit to Russian terms unilaterally? It remains to be seen. But at the moment, well, this threat of imposing sanctions has to be viewed in that context of President Trump trying to appear more balanced and trying to put some sort of pressure on the Russians to make them come and sit at the table and work out a peace agreement. Absolutely. And next few days, like you said, will be very interesting, especially when Trump and Zelensky meet in Saudi Arabia. We'll leave it at that. Thank you for your insights, Ambassador Dayal.